I was lying face down on my kitchen floor, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst through my ribs. Through the gap beneath the pantry door where I'd hidden myself, I could see her feet, those white sneakers I'd bought her just 3 weeks ago, pacing back and forth. In her hand, I glimpsed the syringe. The same one I'd watched her fill with something that definitely wasn't my insulin. Mrs. Patricia. Her voice was sweet, concerned. The voice I'd trusted. Where are you? You need your medication. How had I been so blind? How had I let a stranger, no, worse than a stranger, into my home, into my life, into my most vulnerable moments? And how had I never suspected that the young woman I'd welcomed as my caregiver was actually there to kill me? But here's what she didn't know. I'd already figured out her secret. And my secret? Well, that was going to save my life. Welcome, this is Voice of Deborah. My name is Patricia Holbrook, and at 63 years old, I thought I'd lived enough life to recognize danger when I saw it. I'd survived breast cancer at 45, buried my parents, raised a stepdaughter who barely acknowledged my existence, and built a comfortable life with my husband Richard during our 20-year marriage. I was a retired high school English teacher, proud of my garden, my book club, and my quiet suburban existence in Portland, Maine. Then came the stroke. It happened on a Tuesday morning while I was deadheading roses. One moment I was admiring my prize-winning icebergs, the next I was on the ground, the left side of my body refusing to obey my brain's commands. Richard found me 3 hours later when he came home for lunch. 3 hours that felt like 3 lifetimes. The stroke was moderate, the doctors said. I'd recover most of my mobility with therapy, but I'd need help for a while. My speech was slurred, my left leg weak, and I couldn't be left alone for extended periods. At least not for the first few months. Richard, 58 and still working as a financial advisor, couldn't take time off. His firm was in the middle of a major merger. Or so he said. Looking back now, I wonder how many of his late nights at the office were actually late nights somewhere else entirely. We need to hire someone, he'd said, scrolling through his phone at my hospital bedside. He barely looked at me when he spoke anymore. A live-in caregiver. Just temporarily. I don't want a stranger in our house, I'd mumbled through my still uncooperative mouth. Patricia, be reasonable. What choice do we have? That's how Emma Morgan entered our lives. She arrived on a rainy Thursday afternoon, standing on our porch with a small suitcase and the warmest smile I'd seen in months. 26 years old, with honey blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and kind hazel eyes that seemed genuinely concerned. Mrs. Holbrook. Mema. I'm here to help you get back on your feet. Something about her felt familiar, but I couldn't place it. Maybe it was her mannerisms, the way she tilted her head when she listened, or the small dimple in her left cheek when she smiled. You look like someone, I said, my words still slightly slurred. She laughed softly. I get that a lot. Apparently, I have one of those faces. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma became indispensable. She helped me with physical therapy exercises, prepared healthy meals, kept the house immaculate, and listened to my rambling stories about my teaching days with what seemed like genuine interest. She was patient when I struggled to button my own shirt, encouraging when I managed 3 laps around the backyard without my walker. Richard loved her. She's a godsend, Patricia, he said one evening, actually smiling at dinner for the first time in months. Where did the agency find her? Actually, Emma chimed in, serving us her homemade lasagna. I wasn't from the agency. I saw your posting on that caregiver forum and reached out directly. I hope that's okay. He frowned. What posting? Richard shifted in his seat. The one I made. Line. The agency was too expensive, so I looked for independent caregivers. Something in his tone made my teacher sense tingle. That instinct I'd developed over 30 years of catching students in lies. But the lasagna was delicious. Emma's care was impeccable, and I was tired. So tired. The first strange thing happened on week 3. I woke up at 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and heard voices downstairs. Emma's room was on the first floor, in what used to be Richard's study. As I made my slow way down the stairs, gripping the railing, I heard them clearly. Can't rush this, Emma was saying. It has to look natural. I know, Richard replied. I just thought by now. I deliberately cleared my throat, and the conversation stopped instantly. Mrs. Patricia. Emma appeared in the hallway, all concern. Do you need help? I can manage. What were you two discussing at this hour? Oh, I couldn't sleep, and I heard Mr. Richard get up. We were just talking about your care plan. Different therapy options. But Richard wouldn't meet my eyes. The second red flag came 3 days later. I'd started feeling increasingly drowsy in the afternoons, sleeping for hours when I'd never been a napper before. One day, I pretended to be asleep but kept my eyes slightly open, a trick I'd used on dozing students. Emma stood over me with my afternoon medication, checking her watch. Then she did something odd. She took the pill bottle, emptied 2 pills into her hand, and replaced them with 2 different pills from her pocket. My heart rate spiked, but I forced myself to remain still, breathing evenly. When she brought me the pills with water, I tucked them under my tongue and spit them out later. That night, I didn't feel drowsy at all. With my mind clearer than it had been in weeks, I started paying attention. Real attention. I noticed Emma took phone calls in the backyard, always moving away from windows. I noticed Richard giving her envelopes. Cash, I assumed, though why not just pay her with checks? I noticed the way they sometimes looked at each other across the dinner table, not with romance, but with something else. Conspiracy. Understanding. Then came the photograph. I was looking for a heating pad in Richard's nightstand. He'd been sleeping in the guest room to avoid disturbing my rest, when I found it tucked in the back of a drawer. A photo of Richard, much younger, maybe in his late 30s, with his arm around a teenage girl. She was about 14, with braces and honey blonde hair, laughing at something off camera. That dimple in her left cheek was unmistakable. My hands shook as I turned the photo over. Written on the back in Richard's handwriting, Emma's 14th birthday. My beautiful girl. The world tilted. I sat down hard on the bed, my recovering brain struggling to process. Emma was Richard's daughter. But Richard didn't have a daughter. He'd had a brief first marriage in his 20s that ended in divorce. No children, or so he'd told me. His ex-wife had moved to California, and they'd lost touch. Apparently that had been a lie. That night I pretended to take my medication again. Instead I stayed alert, my door cracked open just enough to hear. They thought I was deeply asleep by 10 p.m. Whatever Emma had been giving me usually knocked me out cold. I heard them in Richard's study, and I recorded everything on my phone, which I'd hidden in the hallway bookshelf behind a copy of Pride and Prejudice. The life insurance policy is solid, Richard said. $2 million. Once she's gone, we split it. You get your share for college, and I can finally retire with Diane. Finn, his secretary, course. But another stroke. Emma's voice sounded uncertain now. Dad, I don't know if I can. You're just adjusting her medication. The doctors will think her condition deteriorated. It happens all the time with stroke patients. No one will question it. She's actually nice, though. Today she showed me pictures of her students, and she talked about teaching me to garden. Emma. Richard's voice turned hard. Don't forget why you're here. Don't forget what she did. I know. You said she ruined your life. That she trapped you in this marriage, that she turned your friends against you, that she's the reason Mom left. All true. Patricia Holbrook destroyed my happiness, and she's been living comfortably while your mother and I struggled. While you struggled. This is justice. My hands clutched the bed sheets. What lies had he told this girl? I'd never trapped him. He'd pursued me relentlessly after my divorce. I'd never turned anyone against him. And I'd never even met his first wife or known about Emma. But here was his daughter, convinced I was some villain from a fairy tale, prepared to kill me to avenge wrongs I'd never committed. The next morning I knew I had to act. But who could I tell? Who would believe that my husband and caregiver were plotting to murder me? I needed proof, real proof, not just a recording that could be dismissed. I decided to search Emma's room while they were both out, Richard at work, Emma at the pharmacy picking up my real medications. In her suitcase, I found the evidence. A bottle labeled as my blood pressure medication, but filled with something else. A journal detailing the dosages she'd been giving me, with notes like increased drowsiness and speech more slurred. And most damning, a draft life insurance policy with Richard as the beneficiary, my signature forged at the bottom, dated 2 weeks before my stroke. They'd been planning this for months. I was photographing everything with shaking hands when I heard the front door open. Too early. Emma was back too early. I shoved everything back into the suitcase and scrambled for the door, but my left leg, still weak, gave out. I fell hard, the phone skittering across the floor. Emma appeared in the doorway. For a long moment we just stared at each other. Then her eyes moved to the open suitcase, to my phone on the floor with her journal still displayed on the screen. "Mrs. Patricia," she said softly, and I saw her hand move to her pocket. "I'm so sorry. I wish you hadn't found that." She pulled out a syringe, already filled with clear liquid. "What is that?" My voice came out as a whisper. "It'll look like another stroke. You'll just go to sleep. Dad says you won't feel anything." "Emma, listen to me." I tried to stand but couldn't. "Whatever Richard told you about me, it's not true. I never even knew you existed until 3 days ago." She faltered. "That's a lie. He showed me the letters you wrote, telling him to abandon Mom when she was pregnant. He showed me the court documents where you made him choose between his career and his daughter. Those are fake, Emma. They have to be. I met Richard 20 years ago. 20 years. You're 26. Do the math." I watched her face as the numbers clicked into place. But he said. He lied to you. About everything. I don't know why, but I swear to you, I never knew he had a daughter. I would never ask anyone to abandon their child. I'm a teacher, Emma. I spent my whole life advocating for children. The syringe wavered in her hand. But the letters had your signature. Forged. Like he forged my signature on that life insurance policy in your suitcase. She looked down at the suitcase, then back at me. Doubt clouded her eyes. "Call your mother," I said desperately. "Right now. Call her and ask her if she ever met me. Ask her if I was the reason she and Richard split up." "I can't. She died 2 years ago. Cancer." My heart broke for her. "I'm so sorry. But Emma, if she died 2 years ago, why did Richard wait until now to contact you? Why now, when I had a stroke and there's insurance money involved?" Her face crumpled. The syringe fell from her fingers, and she sank to the floor, sobbing. "He came to the funeral," she whispered. "He told me he'd always wanted to be part of my life, but you wouldn't let him. He said he wanted to make it right. He said we could finally be a family." "Oh, sweetheart." I managed to crawl over to her, ignoring the pain in my hip from the fall. I pulled this broken young woman into my arms, this girl who'd been manipulated into attempted murder by her own father. "It's not your fault," I told her. "He lied to both of us." That's when we heard the garage door. Richard was home early. Emma and I looked at each other, and I saw the exact moment she made her choice. She grabbed the syringe from the floor. "The pantry," she whispered. "Hide. Now." With her help, I made it to the kitchen pantry just as Richard's footsteps echoed in the hallway. "Emma, why is the front door unlocked? Emma." Through the crack, I watched the scene unfold. "I'm here, Dad." Emma stood in the kitchen doorway, the syringe behind her back. "Where's Patricia?" "Asleep. I gave her the afternoon dose early." She smiled, and it was convincing. My God, she was a good actress. "Actually, I've been thinking. Why wait? We could do it today. Make it look like she fell, hit her head. Speed things along." Richard's face lit up. "Really? I thought you were getting cold feet." "No, you're right. She ruined everything. She deserves this." He crossed the room and hugged his daughter. Over his shoulder, Emma's eyes found mine in the pantry. "I brought something to celebrate," Richard said, pulling back. "That champagne you like." Let's toast to finally being free. Perfect. You pour. I need to grab something from my room. But as he turned to the wine fridge, Emma pulled out her phone. Her fingers flew over the screen. A moment later, my phone buzzed silently in my pocket. I pulled it out carefully. A text from Emma's number. 911 already called. Keep recording. Make him confess. My brave, manipulated, redeemed girl. Actually, Dad, Emma said loudly, clearly. Before we celebrate, I have a question. Did you really love Mom? Or was that a lie too? Richard laughed, pouring champagne. Your mother was a mistake I made when I was young and stupid. But she served her purpose. You proved to be quite useful in the end. And Patricia. Did you ever love her? Patricia was a bank account with a heartbeat. She inherited money from her parents, had a decent pension. I knew she wouldn't last forever. She was older, already had health issues. When she had that stroke, I saw an opportunity. To kill her. To accelerate the inevitable. He handed her a glass. With you helping, no one would suspect anything. The devoted caregiver, the loving husband, the tragic widow. We'd be set for life. What about the forged letters? Emma asked. The ones you showed me, supposedly from Patricia telling you to abandon me? Richard froze, glass halfway to his lips. What? Or the forged life insurance policy? Or the fake court documents? His face transformed from confusion to rage in seconds. What did she tell you? Where is she? I burst from the pantry, phone held high, recording light blinking. Got every word, I said. For a moment Richard just stared. Then he lunged. But Emma was faster. She stepped between us, the syringe suddenly at his throat. Don't move. Emma, baby, she's poisoned your mind. No, Dad. You did that all by yourself. The sirens were already wailing in the distance. The police found everything. The pills Emma had been giving me. Sedatives mixed with blood pressure medication to simulate stroke symptoms, the forged documents, the life insurance policy, even encrypted emails between Richard and his secretary Diane discussing, taking care of the Patricia problem. Richard was arrested for attempted murder, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. Diane was charged as an accomplice. The trial was ugly, but the evidence was overwhelming. He's currently serving 25 to life. But here's the part that still amazes me, Emma. She cooperated fully with the police, testifying against her father despite the emotional devastation. The DA, considering her own victimization and her ultimate choice to save me, offered her immunity in exchange for her testimony. And then she did something extraordinary. She stayed. I don't have anywhere else to go, she admitted one evening after the trial, after the media frenzy had died down. And I know I don't deserve it, but could I actually learn to garden? Like you offered. We worked through it with therapy, both individual and together. It wasn't easy. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. But Emma had been victimized by Richard just as surely as I had. She'd been grieving her mother, desperate for a father's love, and had been fed a steady diet of lies about a woman she'd never met. Today, 2 years later, Emma is finishing her nursing degree. Real nursing with real credentials. She rents the garage apartment, insisted on paying rent from her part-time job, and we've become something neither of us expected. Family. Not caregiver and patient. Not stepmother and stepdaughter. Just family. She has her mother's determination and, I like to think, a bit of the wisdom she's gained from our unlikely bond. I've learned that sometimes the people who hurt you the most can lead you to the people you were meant to find. My physical recovery is complete now. Better than complete. The physical therapy Emma put me through, even while plotting my demise, was apparently excellent. I can outwalk her on our morning jogs, though she'll never admit it. And my roses. This year, Emma and I won first place at the county fair with our new hybrid. A beautiful bloom we named Redemption. So, what did I learn from almost being murdered by my husband's secret daughter? First, trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, investigate. Those afternoon drowsiness spells weren't just stroke recovery. They were warning signs I almost ignored. Second, people are capable of both terrible darkness and incredible light. Emma made a horrible choice, but she also made the right choice when it truly mattered. Don't be so quick to write anyone off, or to fully trust anyone for that matter. Third, family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the person who saves your life after almost ending it. And finally, check your own life insurance policies. Seriously, make sure those signatures are actually yours. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think, or if you just want to hear more incredible true life stories, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that second chances are real, that people can change, and that sometimes the worst betrayal can lead to the most unexpected redemption. Drop a comment below. Have you ever discovered a secret that changed everything? Have you ever given someone a second chance that surprised you? I'd love to hear your stories. And remember, pay attention to the red flags. Trust your gut. And never underestimate the power of forgiveness, even when it seems impossible. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay alert, and maybe don't hire caregivers off internet forums. I'm Patricia Holbrook, and this is my story through Voice of Deborah.